Hello everyone, this is Warhawk Beyond 2040 and welcome to another edition of the Flash Season 9 review series. And today I'm going to be talking about Episode 4, The Mask of the Red Death Part 1, which I've just finished watching. And this episode, apart from a couple of clunky dialogue and some ups and downs, this episode was, for the most part, pretty solid. I quite enjoyed this one a lot. This was very watchable. And, considering that we are now 4 episodes into Season 9, which, of course, as we know, is the final one for the show, this was pretty decent. I quite enjoyed this one a lot. The previous 3 episodes were kind of a hit and miss for me. There was nothing really memorable, nothing to really get your teeth into, and there was nothing really worth talking about, apart from, of course, the Red Death, who has now officially unveiled himself to be none other than Batwoman, aka Ryan Wilder, played by Javicia Leslie. And, we've said this from the very beginning. We all knew that Ryan Wilder was going to be Red Death because we saw a couple of pictures leaked that, we was going to get Javicia Leslie on the show as Red Death. We all knew deep down we weren't going to get Batman, which is a shame really, because I think that could have been a really epic way to close out the final season of The Flash. And, would it have been nice to have Oliver Queen as the Red Death? Absolutely, but we weren't going to get that either. But what we got here with Red Death kind of reminded me a bit of Zoom from Season 2. A little bit different. I still say Zoom was far more scarier and had a much cooler costume. The Red Death's costume looked okay. Didn't really look fully red as such. It's like I don't know really. It looked kind of like a very dark red, almost looked black, but it looked okay. It looked fine. I know some people said it looked like something out of Power Rangers. You can't please everyone, but I thought overall the costume looked okay. Did remind me a bit of Zoom, a little bit too much. No one will ever beat Zoom. Zoom was just on another level, I've said that before. Zoom was like, if you took Bane, gave him super speed, fused him with the Venom symbiotes, you'd get pretty much Zoom, and that's pretty much what he was. He was like a hybrid of Venom and Bane and the Flash all rolled into one. He was a scary, scary dude. Red Death was scary, but not so scary as Zoom. I think Zoom still holds that crown, in my opinion. So anyway, I'm going to give a little quick recap of what's happened so far, and then after that we're going to get straight into talking about Episode 4. So, as we saw previously in Episode 3, the rogues comprised of Mercer, Warzek, and Murmur stole a temporal scanner from Corbin Taft Industries, and Barry found out that they're planning to build a cosmic treadmill, and they were missing a vibration engine. So Barry essentially assembled his own band of rogues comprised of Hartley, Mark, Jacko and Goldface to help steal the vibration engine before the other rogues did. And of course this led to a few trust issues with the rogues and Barry Allen. And then of course Barry revealed his secret identity to the rogues, that he was in fact the Flash. And we saw both gangs of rogues go at it, and then we saw Red Death officially unveiled himself, took out the Flash and ran away. And we saw at the very end of that episode the Red Death was revealed to be none other than Ryan Wilder, aka Batwoman. And we also saw in that same scene Barry had learned that Batwoman had gone missing after going out on patrol as Batwoman, and Hartley, Jacko and Goldface agreed to continue helping the Flash out and said that if there was ever an emergency, they would be there to help him out. Reluctantly, of course. So that was pretty much how we ended Episode 3. We ended with the reveal of the Red Death, and we saw the Rogues essentially agreed to help Barry Allen out in the event that Red Death could return. So, episode 3, bit of a hit and miss for me, but a cool ending and a great setup for episode 4. So, with that all said, let's not waste any more time. Let's get straight into it. Let's talk about episode 4, The Mask of the Red Death, part 1. So, this episode opens up at the Red Death's lair, where Mark is working on building the cosmic treadmill, though Red Death doesn't feel he's working fast enough. It still needs a power source, but Red Death tells him to leave that to her and then dashes off to recruit another mouse, or villain as she sees it, to their cause. At the loft, Barry and Iris are trying to figure out what the Red Death needs to use the treadmill for. They still believe that Red Death is a man and that they are the avatar for the negative speed force. Barry thinks that maybe the Red Death can be saved, and seeing a chance to save him in a way he couldn't save Thorn. Iris tells Barry that he is not to blame for what Thorn did, and Iris is continuing to work on Ryan Wilder's disappearance. Barry goes to leave to go to Star Labs, and we see at the West household, Joe is reading Jenna a bedtime story when Cecile discovers a real estate pamphlet for a house in Keystone City. Joe thinks that they should buy the house in order to give Jenna a normal life. Cecile is not on board, as she feels that Central City is her home, and Joe explains to her that he wasn't the father that Iris and Wally needed, and that he wants to give Jenna a better life somewhere else because he feels that Central City isn't safe to raise their own child. So we got a very emotional scene between Cecile and Joe. Now, Joe for me is the Jonathan Kent of the show. He is the glue that holds the family together, and he's essentially the dad of the entire Team Flash, because I've always said from the beginning that no Joe, no Team Flash. He keeps all the youngsters in check, and I can fully understand where he's coming from, and that line where he says, I go out and do my job and I'm worried that I'm never going to return home to see my kids. So I can totally see where he's coming from. Meanwhile, at Star Labs, Chester is still dealing with things being awkward with himself and Allegra. Yeah, anyway, but there is no time to really deal with that since they are trying to find Red Death, who shows up in Central City and Flash responds. Red Death has come armed with Roy Biavlo, who uses his powers and allows for Red Death to engulf the city in pure darkness and kidnaps the Flash. At the lair, Flash is revealed to be Red Death's power source, and a lot more is revealed as well. Red Death is a woman, and Red Death reveals that he is just one part of the plan and that she also needs Iris. At Star Labs, the team realise they don't have a way to contact or find Barry. Keone comes up with the idea to team up with their team of rogues to find Barry, and Chester realises that they can use low-tech to call on them. At Barry and Iris' loft, Ryan Wilder mysteriously shows up injured with a burned arm. Ryan tells Iris that she was coming into the city when she was hit by an EMP, which caused her injury. She claims that she was hit by this same Red Death person in Gotham and that they stole her technology, but Iris, of course, is very skeptical. At Star Labs, the Rogue Squad shows up and Hartley has an idea of how they can track Barry using different tech, but it doesn't work because Barry is wearing meta dampeners. Meanwhile, Red Death continues to taunt Barry and lets him know that she isn't the avatar of the negative speed force. She reveals that there's actually no one inside the armor, and Barry realizes that Red Death is actually controlling it remotely and that she built her own speed. She needs Barry to power the treadmill because her speed is fake and artificial, and she's going to run Barry to death until he can't run anymore. Interesting. Iris figures out that this Ryan is not the one she knows and confronts her. Ryan pleads with her, explaining that she's from another timeline where the Flash is the villain, and she explains that there was no Batman in her world, and that the Waynes adopted her as a child, and then they were murdered, and she became Gotham's protector, studying her enemy's technology and making her own before studying her allies and making it her own as well, including creating an artificial speed force. She started eliminating crime before it happened and even stopped villains before they could even think about committing the crime. But she claims her Flash turned against her to stop her, and she tried to hide in the Speed Force, but it rejected her and spit her out in this world. She's now trying to get home so she can stop the Rogue War, and she needs Iris's help. At the lair, Mark tries to offer Barry water, and Barry tells him that he doesn't have to help Red Death. Mark thinks it's too late for him, but Barry tells him he's part of Team Flash even after what he's done, and that people can make mistakes. Mark says, I was never part of Team Flash anyway, and I'm not. Barry says it's never too late for second chances. At home, Iris isn't buying Ryan's story, and Ryan reveals that she accidentally killed her Iris fighting the Flash. Iris believes her story about Iris, but she doesn't believe the rest of Ryan's story, and it angers her and gets Ryan to reveal she wants to kill her Flash. Ryan gets deranged, calls in her suit, and kidnaps Iris. We then see evil Ryan uses Iris as bait to force Barry to run, which he does. He gets on the treadmill and starts causing lightning to strike all through the city, including the West House. Cecile is able to use her powers to save Jenna and then takes off to help save the neighbours too. At Star Labs, with the metacuffs off, the team now has a location for Barry so they can make plans to go and save him because Allegra has a teleporter device while at the lair. Mark remembers Barry's pep talk and sabotages the treadmill, temporarily taking down Ryan and destroying the device. Barry can't run because his speed has been drained, so Mark goes to fight the rogues to give Barry a chance to escape. Barry's rogue squad arrives to the rescue, and while Barry wants to go save Mark, Red Death is powering up, so the team leaves Mark behind and teleports back to Star Labs. Mark, it would seem, has been killed by Red Death and the rogues. The team realise that Ryan is now stuck in this timeline, and whatever she plans next will only get worse. Allegra goes to talk to Chester, but Chester decides that now is not the time and we should stop Red Death before it's too late. Yeah, we don't care about these two. Sorry, we don't. At the West House, Joe realises that maybe moving to Keystone City isn't the best idea because while it would give Jenna a normal life, it would deprive her of seeing her mum become the hero. Jenna gives Cecile a drawing of her dressed in a superhero costume, complete with costume and mask. Oh, nice. And then we see at Red Death's lair, Red Death has a complete meltdown and decides that if she can't get to her own world, she's just going to take this one for her own. And that's how we end episode 4. Apart from a couple of clunky dialogue and a couple of ups and downs, I thought episode 4 was pretty solid and quite watchable. You know, I thought this was probably one of the better episodes so far for season 9. And as I said before, you know, the previous 3 episodes were kind of a hit and miss for me. So I'm really pleased that this episode more than made up for the previous 3. So hopefully going forward, the episodes will slowly start to get better because this is, after all, the final season of The Flash. So 4 episodes into it now, didn't get off to a great start, but this one, I would say, more than made up for it. As I said, there are a couple of little scenes where I cringed a bit, but overall, this was pretty solid, I would say. So that's going to be it for me. I am going to wrap this up now. What was your thoughts on episode 4? Did you enjoy it? What did you think of Mark getting killed off? Do you think he's really dead? And also, what was your thoughts on Red Death's plan about using the cosmic treadmill to go back to her world? Do you think this could be a setup for something else? And what do you suppose happened in her world with her Flash? Do you think she was telling the truth? Do you think the Flash of her world was really the villain? And also, what did Ryan Wilder mean by she's going to make this world her own? Does this involve other speedsters joining the battle against the Flash, or could this be something entirely different? You know what to do, guys. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, leave your thoughts and comments down below, and I will be back next time for another edition of the Flash Season 9 review series, where I am going to be talking about episode 5, which is part 2 of The Mask of the Red Death. So that should be a very interesting one, especially with the way this episode played out and with the way this episode ended. So I'm looking forward to seeing how this is all going to go down. So until next time, take care, everybody, and stay safe. And once again, as always, much appreciated. Thanks for listening.